The wind cut low across the street, carrying dust and the smell of old wood and sweat. In a town like this, dawn came hard and left harder. Doors creaked open with no promise behind them, and the sun found men already tired. Folks said the frontier took more than it gave, and the town proved it every morning. The saloon stood at the center, built of warped boards and bad choices. A single lamp still burned inside, yellow and weak. At a table near the wall, a girl sat with her hands folded tight, eyes lowered, breath shallow. Her dress was plain and worn thin at the sleeves. She had learned to be quiet early. Quiet kept the shouting down. Quiet kept the fists from flying most days. She listened to the scrape of boots and the clink of glass and knew how this would end, even before it did. Her father leaned across the table, fingers shaking as he reached for the bottle. His hair had gone gray too fast, and his eyes carried a fever that never cooled. He spoke with a laugh that cracked in the middle like dry wood split wrong. He talked of debt and luck and a fresh start. The man across from him nodded, slow and patient, counting coins without looking at the girl. Whiskey shone amber between them, the promise of forgetfulness strong as a prayer. The girl's name was Eliza. She had once believed names meant something. She believed less now. She felt the town watching her without seeing her, felt the walls press in. Frontier life had taught her how small a person could become when no one stood close enough to hear a heartbeat. She thought of the creek beyond town, the cottonwoods along the bend, and the way her mother's voice once rose at dusk. That voice had gone quiet years before. The bottle tipped, coins slid. The deal took shape like a storm cloud, slow and certain. The door opened, and a man stepped in from the light. He paused, letting his eyes adjust. He was tall and spare, coat dusted from the road, hat brim low. His boots bore miles, not polish. A long scar traced his knuckles, white against brown skin. He carried himself like someone who had learned patience the hard way. Folks knew him as Cole, though few knew where he came from or where he slept. He worked when there was work, rode when there was not, and spoke little. Cole took in the room without hurry. He saw the bottle. He saw the coins. He saw the girl's shoulders drawn tight as wire. He felt a familiar weight settle in his chest, the kind that came when old wrongs showed new faces. He had seen this road before on forgotten trails that led to places no map would mark. He walked closer. The men at the table glanced up, measuring him. The girl did not look up. She listened to the sound of boots stop beside her chair. "That's enough," Cole said. His voice was low, steady. It carried without effort. The father sneered, lifting the bottle like a prize. "Mind your own," he said, words slurred. "This here is settled." Cole set 2 gold coins on the table. They rang clear, clean as creek water. "I'd pay double," he said. "And I'll pay now." The room went quiet. Even the lamp seemed to flicker less. Eliza lifted her eyes then. She saw a man not looking at her like a thing to be traded. She saw a face marked by sun and loss, eyes dark and fixed on the bottle, not her. The hope that rose scared her more than fear ever had. The other man laughed, sharp and short. "She's worth less than the glass," he said. Cole's jaw set. "You don't get to say that." The father's hand shook as he reached for the coins. His eyes darted, hungry. For a moment, Eliza thought he might take them and still push her away. The frontier taught lessons without mercy. A woman stood near the back, shawl tight around her shoulders, watching with eyes that held old knowing. Some said she carried blood from the first people of this land. She spoke to Eliza once by the well about listening to the earth and keeping your name close. Eliza felt those words now like a hand on her back. Outside, a child cried. Inside, the deal hovered, waiting to fall. Cole slid the coins a little closer. "Take it," he said to the father. "Walk away." The bottle tipped again, whiskey spilling across the table, soaking into the wood. The father cursed, grabbing at the glass. Coins clattered to the floor. Men shifted in their seats. Trouble breathed easy in places like this. Eliza stood before she knew she would. Her legs trembled, but she stood. "Please," she said, to no one and everyone. Her voice surprised her with its strength. Cole turned then, just enough to meet her eyes. He nodded once, small. "I won't leave you," he said. The words settled over her like a blanket. Cowboy romance had always sounded like a story told by fires that burned too bright. Yet here was a promise spoken plain without shine. The saloon keeper cleared his throat. "Best take it outside," he said, not looking at anyone. Cole picked up the coins. "We'll go," he said. He placed his coat around Eliza's shoulders, careful like the act mattered. It did. They stepped into the morning. The old West town watched, quiet and curious. The wind tugged at the coat. Eliza felt the cold and the warmth beneath it. She felt the road open ahead, full of risk and chance. Western survival meant walking when staying would kill you slow. Behind them, the father shouted. The sound broke something loose inside Eliza, something she had tied down too long. She did not turn back. Cole guided her toward his horse, a patient animal with kind eyes. Beyond the town lay trails that forgot names and kept secrets. Somewhere along those trails, danger waited, and choice, and the long work of living. As Cole reached for the reins, a shadow crossed the road ahead. Men stepped from the alley, blocking the way, faces set with intent. The wind rose again, and the lamp inside the saloon went dark. The men in the alley stepped out slow, like they had all the time in the world. Their coats were good wool, their hats clean, their boots not worn by miles. That alone made them dangerous. Hard men of the trail came in dusty and tired. These came in neat and sure, the kind that hurt you and then went on eating supper. Cole stopped with his hand on the reins. He did not reach for a weapon. He simply stood between Eliza and the men as if it was the most natural thing on earth. His shoulders were loose, but his eyes were sharp. "Morning," the tallest one said. He had a smile that did not touch his eyes. "That girl belongs to someone." Eliza felt her throat tighten. The coat around her shoulders smelled of sun and leather and smoke. She clutched it with both hands, as if holding cloth could hold her life together. Cole kept his voice calm. "No one owns her," the man chuckled. "You're new to town, or you'd know better." Cole's gaze flicked to the side street. A few townsfolk had stopped to watch. No one moved closer. Frontier life taught people not to stand near trouble unless they had to. Eliza saw a woman peeking from behind a window curtain, then vanishing. She saw a boy no older than 10 holding a sack of flour, frozen in place. She saw fear hide in plain sight. The tallest man angled his head toward the saloon. Her father made a bargain. Cole's jaw tightened. A drunk's bargain isn't worth the spit it's spoken with. That earned a shift among them. One man stepped forward, young and quick, his hand close to his belt. Another stayed back, watching Cole's face as if reading it was his trade. Eliza's heart beat loud in her ears. She felt small again, the way she had felt at that table. Only now she could see the sky, wide and cold and uncaring, and she knew running would not save her. There was nowhere to run that these men could not follow. Cole spoke again, softer. "Take your message back to whoever sent you. Tell him she's leaving this town." The tallest man's smile thinned. "Leaving for where?" "The land is harsh out there. Wolves don't ask for permission." "Men like us don't either." Cole did not move, but his presence grew heavy, like storm clouds stacking up. "You can step aside," he said. "Or you can stand there and watch us go anyway." The alley men glanced at one another. They were not here for a fight in daylight, not with witnesses. They were here to remind Cole that the town had rules and that outsiders paid for breaking them. The tallest man took one slow step back, making room as if he was generous. "Go on," he said. "But we'll talk again." Cole nodded once. He led the horse forward, steady as a river current. Eliza walked close to him, trying to match his calm, though her knees felt like they might buckle. They passed the men. Eliza kept her eyes forward, but she felt their gaze on her like hands. When they were a few paces beyond, she heard the tallest man speak again, almost pleasant. "Ask him what happened at Bitter Hollow," he called after her. Cole did not turn. His grip tightened on the reins for a heartbeat, then eased. Eliza noticed anyway. They reached the edge of town where the boardwalk ended and the dirt road began. Beyond lay open country, pale grass and scrub and distant hills that looked like they had been carved by sorrow. A hawk circled above, alone. Cole stopped beside a hitching post and lifted Eliza up onto the saddle with a careful hand at her elbow. He did it like she was something worth protecting, not something to be hurried and handled. She sat stiff, unsure where to place her hands, afraid she might fall, afraid she might stay. Cole swung up behind her. His horse started forward at a walk, calm as if it had carried fear before and knew the way through it. They left the town behind. The buildings shrank, the saloon's false warmth fading into the morning haze. Eliza's breath began to loosen, but the tightness in her chest did not leave. It only changed shape. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Wind pressed against Eliza's face, drying the dampness at the corner of her eyes. The land rolled out in quiet waves, empty and loud at the same time. She had traveled some with her father, when he still tried to be a father. But those trips had always ended at another town, another card table, another broken promise. Cole guided the horse along a rutted track that ran beside a shallow creek. Cottonwoods stood thin and tired, branches bare in places where the wind had taken more than it gave. Eliza watched the water slip over stones, and she thought of her mother. Her mother had been called Mabel. It was an old name, like a hymn. She had been the kind of woman who hummed while she worked, who could stitch a tear in a shirt and a tear in a heart if given enough time. Eliza remembered her hands smelling of soap and sage. She remembered her laugh, soft, like a secret. Then came fever. Then came a grave behind a church that did not have enough nails to keep the roof straight. After that, her father's eyes changed. The bottle took the place where love should have stayed. Eliza swallowed. "Why did you do it?" she asked, voice barely above the hoofbeats. "Back there." Cole's chin dipped, as if he had heard the question from a long distance away. "Because it was wrong," he said. "That's not enough," she whispered, surprised at herself. "Men don't spend gold on wrong." Cole's silence stretched. He watched the trail ahead like it might rise up and strike. When he finally spoke, his voice held something rough beneath it. "I've seen what happens when no one steps in," he said. "I used to tell myself it wasn't my affair." Eliza felt the words land heavy. She wanted to ask what he meant, but fear held her back. She had lived with a man who grew angry when questioned. She had learned to keep her curiosity buried. They rode on. The sun climbed higher, but the air stayed cold. The world smelled of dry grass and distant smoke. Far off, a line of dark trees marked a ridge. Beyond that lay land Eliza did not know. The unknown scared her, yet it also carried a strange pull, like the first breath after being underwater too long. Cole's horse turned onto a narrower trail that slipped between low hills. Eliza noticed tracks in the dust, not fresh but not old either, hoof prints, some heavy, some light. A wagon had passed here, weeks ago perhaps. Another set of prints looked like they belonged to men on foot, spaced far apart, as if they had been watching the road more than walking it. Cole saw them too. His body went still, listening through the horse, through the wind. He did not speak, but Eliza felt the alertness in him like a tightening rope. They stopped near a stand of brush where the creek widened into a shallow pool. Cole slid off the horse and helped Eliza down. He moved with care, but his eyes kept scanning the hills. "Drink," he said, holding out his canteen. Eliza took a sip. The water was cool and tasted faintly of tin. She handed it back and watched him drink, the way his throat moved, the way his hand steadied the canteen without shaking. He was not young, but he was not old either. His face carried lines that did not belong to time alone. "You're not from around here," Eliza said. Cole capped the canteen. "No." "Bitter hollow," she tried, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Cole's gaze lifted to the ridge. For a moment, Eliza thought he would refuse to answer. Then he spoke. Quiet. "It's a place I don't go back to." "That's not an answer," she said, then flinched, expecting anger. Cole only nodded, as if she was right. "It's all I've got." Eliza stared at the creek. She watched a leaf spin in slow circles, trapped in an eddy. That was how her life had felt, caught in the same bend over and over. A sound drifted on the wind, faint but clear enough to raise the hair on Eliza's arms. A distant cry, not a bird, not a coyote. Something human or close to it carried across the hills and swallowed again. Cole's head turned sharply. His hand went to the horse's neck, steadying it. "We're not alone," he said. Eliza's mouth went dry. "Those men from town," she whispered. "Maybe," Cole said. "Or maybe someone else." She looked around at the empty land. It did not feel empty anymore. It felt like it was holding its breath. Cole led the horse behind the brush, out of sight from the trail. He kept his movements slow, so the animal would not spook. Then he crouched, studying the dust again, following the tracks with his eyes. Eliza hugged the coat tighter around herself. "Where are we going?" she asked. Cole glanced at her, and for the first time she saw something like doubt in him, a shadow behind the steadiness. "There's a place west of here," he said. "A small ranch that owes me a favor." If it still stands, Eliza repeated, the words turning cold in her stomach. Cole rose and looked toward the ridge again. "The land changes fast," he said. "So do men." Eliza wanted to ask if he had a family, if he had someone waiting for him, but she did not. She was afraid of the answer, and afraid of what it might make her feel. A gust of wind swept through the brush, rattling dry leaves like bones. The horse flicked its ears, nervous. Then Eliza heard it again, closer now, a low murmur of voices carried on the wind, not from the town, from the trail. Cole's eyes narrowed. He stepped to Eliza's side, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, solid and real. "Stay behind me," he said. Eliza nodded, unable to speak. Her heart beat hard as hoofbeats, fast and uneven. Out on the trail, beyond the brush, shadows moved where no shadows should have been. The shadows on the trail became shapes. 2 riders first, then a third behind them, spaced wide like men who did not trust the land to stay quiet. Their horses moved at a measured pace, not hurried, not wandering. They were following a line, and that line led straight through the narrow cut between the hills. Cole stayed still. He did not crouch the way a frightened man might. He stood like a post driven into the earth, one hand resting on the horse's neck, the other loose at his side. Eliza pressed back into the brush, holding her breath so hard her ribs ached. The riders drew nearer. Eliza could see their hats, the tilt of their shoulders, the easy way they sat their saddles. Not drifters, not ranch hands, men with purpose. One of them spoke, and even through the wind Eliza caught a few words. "He came this way," the rider said. "No other track." "No wagon," another answered. "Keep your eyes on the creek." "He'll want water?" Cole's gaze sharpened, and something in him went cold. He glanced down at the dust near the bank, at their own hoofprints. They had tried to hide the horse, but tracks told stories no mouth could deny. Eliza's hands trembled under the coat. "Are they after me?" she whispered, barely moving her lips. Cole did not take his eyes off the trail. "Could be," he murmured. "Could be after me?" Those words struck her like a slap, not from cruelty but from truth. She had begun to think this danger belonged to her father's bargain alone, a mess left behind in the saloon. But the name the alley men had thrown was not meant for her. Bitter Hollow was a stone tied to Cole's past, and now it dragged through her life too. The rider slowed, the lead horse snorted, ears flicking. It had scented water, maybe more. Cole shifted a half step, placing his body so he blocked Eliza from view. He did not touch her, but the space between them narrowed until she could feel his steadiness like heat. The riders passed the brush line without turning their heads. Eliza's lungs burned. She waited for the moment one of them would glance over, catch the pale edge of her dress, the dark line of Cole's coat. They did not. Or they did and chose to keep riding. When the last rider disappeared around the bend, Cole stayed still a few seconds longer, listening. Only when the wind returned to its normal sound did he exhale. Eliza's knees weakened. She grabbed the brush to steady herself. "Who were they?" she asked. Cole's face remained calm, but his eyes carried a faraway look, as if the trail had opened into memory. "Men hired for finding," he said. "They don't ask much. They don't care much. Hired by who?" Cole hesitated. "A man called Harrow," he said at last. "He runs freight and money between towns. Owns half the land he's never seen." Eliza swallowed. She had heard the name in whispers near the saloon, spoken the way people spoke of winter sickness or drought. Something that came and took, and you could not argue with it. "Why would he want you?" she asked. Cole's mouth tightened. "Because I didn't do what he asked," he said. Eliza's stomach turned. "What did he ask?" Cole looked down at his hands as if checking they were still his. "A long time back, he wanted a ranch cleared," he said. "A family was in his way. He said they were squatters." "He said they had no papers." Eliza waited, the silence growing thick. I rode with men who took his coin, Cole continued. I thought it was just pushing folks off land. I told myself that was frontier life. I told myself it was none of my business what happened after. His voice stayed even, but something in it cracked beneath the surface. Eliza felt it like a tremor in the ground. And, she whispered. Cole shut his eyes for a beat. It wasn't just pushing, he said. It was worse, it was cruelty. It was a lesson. And when I saw what it truly was, I stood in the way, Eliza's breath caught. You stopped them. I tried, he said, not enough. Not in time for everyone. The wind slipped through the brush, cold against Eliza's cheeks. She pictured a family on a patch of land, a small house, a fence line, children laughing in dust. Then she pictured it breaking. She did not want to picture more. Cole opened his eyes again. Harrow never forgets a man who says no. He treats it like theft. Eliza's hands tightened on the coat. So those men, she said. They'll keep coming, Cole nodded once. If he's hunting, he'll send more. Different faces. Same purpose. Eliza looked out at the hills. The land seemed to stretch forever, yet it offered no hiding place. Western survival was not only about weather or hunger. It was about people who believed power was theirs by right. Cole reached for the reins. We should move, he said. We've been here too long. They mounted again, and the horse picked its way along the creek, hooves sinking soft in damp sand. Eliza sat straighter now, but her mind swirled. Cole had stepped in to save her from a cruel bargain, yet he carried a shadow that could swallow them both. They rode for hours, the sun moving west, shadows lengthening. The land grew rougher, hills rising in hard folds, the creek narrowing to a thread. At times Eliza saw smoke in the far distance, thin as a ribbon, a camp maybe, or a burn. Or something worse. As the afternoon waned, they reached a patch of higher ground where the trail split. One path ran toward a line of trees, thicker and darker. Another path ran open across scrubland toward low mountains. Cole slowed the horse, studying both. Eliza shifted, careful. You said a ranch owed you a favor, she said. Cole nodded. West, he replied, near the tree line. If it's still there, and if it's not? Cole did not answer at first. The silence held an edge. Then we keep riding, he said. Eliza looked down at her hands, dirt under her nails. The coat clasped in her fingers. You don't even know me, she said, voice soft. Cole's head tilted slightly. I know enough, he replied. That I was sold, she said bitterly. That I'm trouble, Cole's voice firmed. You're not trouble, he said. Trouble is what men do to you and call it lawful. The words made something ache behind Eliza's eyes. She blinked hard, refusing tears. She had cried enough in that saloon. She had cried enough in that small room behind it, where her father left her when he went drinking through the night. Cole turned the horse toward the trees. They reached the tree line just before dusk. Pines stood tall and silent, their needles catching the last light. The air smelled of resin and damp earth. Eliza felt her shoulders loosen a fraction. Trees made a person feel less watched, though they could hide danger just as well. Ahead, a small cabin appeared, half sunk into the slope, smoke rising from its chimney. A fenced pen stood nearby, empty. A dog barked once, sharp. Cole stopped at the edge of the clearing. He did not ride in at once. He watched the cabin, the fence, the shadows between the trees. Eliza leaned forward slightly. Is this it? She asked. Cole's eyes narrowed. It should be, he said. The door opened. A woman stepped out, tall and straight, hair braided down her back, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. In her face Eliza saw both strength and weariness, the kind that came from living on land that demanded everything. She held a rifle low, not aimed, but ready. Beside her stood a young boy, maybe 8 or 9, peering around her hip with bright eyes. Cole raised one hand, palm out, a sign of peace. It's me, he called. Cole. The woman did not lower the rifle. Her gaze stayed hard on him. You got nerve? She said. Showing up here, Eliza felt Cole's posture tighten. The boy looked from Cole to Eliza, his eyes widened. Ma, he whispered. Who's that? The woman's gaze slid to Eliza. For a moment it softened, just a little. Then it hardened again, as if softness was too dangerous. Cole spoke carefully. "This is Eliza," he said. "She needs a safe place." The woman's mouth set. "Safe," she repeated, like the word was a lie. "You don't bring safe, Cole? You bring storms?" Eliza's stomach dropped. She glanced back at the trees. Dusk was deepening. The trail behind them was long and open. The thought of turning back made her dizzy. Cole dismounted, slow and respectful, keeping his hands visible. "I wouldn't come if it wasn't dire," he said. The woman's eyes sharpened. "What did you do?" she asked. Cole did not answer at once. That pause said more than words. The boy stepped forward, curiosity pulling him past caution. He looked at Eliza's coat, at the tremble in her hands. His face held a softness Eliza had not seen in a long time. He reminded her of herself before hunger and fear learned her name. The woman barked. "Tomas, back!" The boy froze, then obeyed, but his eyes stayed on Eliza. Cole took a breath. "Harrow is hunting," he said. At the name, the woman's face changed. Not fear exactly. Something colder, a remembering. "Eliza's father sold her," Cole added. "Men already came once?" The woman's grip tightened on the rifle. "Then you brought him to my door," she said. Cole's voice went low. "I brought her away from him," he replied. "I'm trying to keep her alive." Eliza felt the weight of their words like stones. She stood there, caught between strangers with old wounds, her life balanced on their history. The woman studied Eliza again, taking in the worn dress, the hollowed cheeks, the way she stood as if braced for a blow. "Eliza," the woman said, voice quieter. "Do you know who he is?" Eliza looked at Cole. His face was steady, but his eyes asked her something without speaking. "Trust me, or don't. Either way, the night was coming." "I know he paid to save me," Eliza said, voice shaking. "I know he stood between me and men who would have taken me. I don't know the rest." The woman's eyes stayed on Cole. "The rest will kill you if you don't learn it," she said. Cole's jaw flexed. "Not tonight," he said. The woman held the rifle a moment longer. The dog barked again from somewhere near the cabin, uneasy. In the distance, an owl called, lonely and sharp. At last, the woman nodded once toward the cabin, not a welcome, not a refusal, something in between. "One night," she said, "you sleep in the shed." "She stays inside." Eliza's chest loosened with a breath she did not know she held. One night meant warmth. One night meant walls between her and the open dark. It did not mean safety. It did not mean tomorrow. Cole nodded. "Thank you, Naya," he said. Naya's eyes flickered at his voice saying her name. The boy, Tomas, watched Eliza with a mix of wonder and worry as if he could feel trouble clinging to her like dust. As Eliza followed Naya toward the cabin, she glanced back at Cole. He remained in the clearing, silhouetted against the fading light, alone with the horse and the coming night. And beyond the tree line, somewhere on the open trail, a faint sound carried toward them, like hoofbeats far off, too steady to be the wind. Inside the cabin, the air was warmer than Eliza expected, thick with the smell of pine smoke and stew simmering low. A worn blanket hung across one wall to keep the draft out. A small table sat near the hearth, scarred by years of use, with a tin cup turned upside down beside a crust of bread. It was not comfort the way townsfolk spoke of comfort, but it was shelter, and on the frontier that meant everything. Naya moved with quiet purpose, setting another bowl on the table as if she could feed fear out of a body. Thomas hovered near the doorway, watching Eliza with wide eyes, half shy, half curious. Eliza kept her hands close, unsure what to do with them, unsure where to stand in a room that was not hers. "You can sit," Naya said, not unkind, but guarded. "You look like you've been standing your whole life." Eliza lowered herself onto a stool. The wood creaked. She tried not to flinch. "Thank you," she whispered. Naya's eyes stayed on her a moment, measuring more than Eliza's words. "Eat," she said. "It will help you think straight." Eliza took a spoonful of stew. It was simple, beans and salt pork, but the warmth spread through her like a slow blessing. She realized then how long she had lived on scraps and hollow stomach nights. Tomas leaned forward. "Are you from the town?" he asked. Eliza nodded. "I was," she said. "Not by choice." Tomas frowned as if trying to understand a thing too large. "Is that your pa?" he asked. "The one that sold you?" Eliza's throat tightened. She looked down at her bowl. "He was my father," she said. and it felt like the truth and not the same thing. Thomas's face pinched with anger that did not belong to a child. "If my pa did that," he said, "Ma would—" Naya's voice cut in sharp. "Thomas," he fell silent, but his eyes stayed fierce. Eliza glanced toward the small window. Dusk had deepened to night. Outside, the pines swayed, their tops moving like dark water. Then she heard it again, faint at first, then clearer, hoofbeats, not one horse. More than one. Naya's head lifted. Her hand moved toward the rifle leaned by the door. "Stay here," she told Eliza. Eliza's spoon froze mid-air. Her heart began to pound. "They found us," she whispered. Naya did not answer. She moved to the window and peered out, her breath slow, controlled. Thomas slipped behind her, but she pushed him back with one firm hand. Eliza rose, shaking. The cabin felt smaller now, the walls thin as paper. Outside, a low whistle sounded, short and sharp. Then a voice carried through the trees, calm as a man calling cattle. "Cole," the voice said. "We know you're here." Eliza's stomach dropped. That voice did not belong to the alleymen from town. It was older, steadier, full of ownership. Naya's jaw tightened. She hissed under her breath, "Harrow." Eliza felt the name hit like winter wind. Cole had spoken it like a thing that followed, and now it stood at their door with horses and men. A second voice called, lighter. "No need for hiding. We're only here to collect what's owed." Naya glanced at Eliza. In her eyes, Eliza saw a warning and something else, a reluctant sympathy. "You stay behind the table," Naya said. "If anything happens, you keep low." Eliza nodded, unable to speak. Naya opened the door just a crack, enough to look out. Cold air rushed in. Eliza could smell horses and sweat and damp leather. In the clearing, 3 riders sat mounted. A 4th man stood on foot near the shed, his hat pushed back, his coat long and fine. Even in the dark, his presence carried. He was not big, but he stood like a man who believed the world would move for him. Cole stepped into view from the shadow near the shed. Eliza's breath caught. He had been out there alone, between their small safety and the night full of hunters. "Go on," Cole said, voice calm but hard. "Say what you came to say?" Harrow's smile was thin. "You're a stubborn one," he replied. "I always admired that. It's why I gave you chances." Cole did not move. "I didn't come for chances," he said. "I came to leave." Harrow's gaze shifted to the cabin door. For a heartbeat, Eliza felt it touch her through the crack like a hand. "And you brought company," Harrow said. "That's new." Naya's voice came low. "Leave my land." Harrow turned toward her as if he had only just noticed the cabin belonged to someone. "Naya," he said smoothly. "Still living like a thorn. Still guarding what you can't keep." Naya's grip tightened on the door edge. "This isn't your place," she said. Harrow chuckled. "Everything is my place if I say it is." Cole stepped closer, putting himself directly between Harrow and the cabin. "You want me," he said. "Not them?" Harrow's eyes narrowed with amusement. "Do I?" he said. "Or do I want the lesson you owe me?" Cole's jaw flexed. "I told you no," he said. Harrow's voice stayed calm, but the chill in it deepened. "You told me no at Bitter Hollow," he replied. "You cost me men, cost me coin, cost me respect. A man like me cannot afford that." Eliza's knees weakened. She gripped the table edge inside the cabin, fighting the urge to collapse. Tomas clutched Naya's skirt. "Ma," he whispered. Naya's face remained steady, but Eliza saw fear flicker there, quick and buried, not fear of death. Fear of loss. Harrow lifted his chin toward the shed. "Come with us," he called to Cole, quietly. "No fuss, I'll even forget the girl from town, if she's what you were so noble about." Eliza felt heat rise in her cheeks. The way he said it, as if she was a coin to be traded again. Cole's voice sharpened. "She's not part of your bargain." Harrow's smile faded. "She becomes part of whatever I decide," he said. Then his gaze drifted back to the cabin door. "And so do you, Naya. And the boy." Tomas made a small sound like a hurt animal. Naya's hand moved to the rifle. "You threaten my child," she said, voice low. "And you won't leave these trees breathing." Harrow's men shifted in their saddles. The air tightened, full of the kind of danger that came before a storm broke. Cole took a breath. He looked toward the cabin door, toward Eliza, though she was hidden behind it. "Naya," he said quietly. "Don't." Naya's eyes cut to him. "Don't," she repeated, bitter. "You brought him here?" Cole's face tightened. "I didn't know he was this close," he said. Harrow laughed softly. "He didn't know," he mocked, and then his eyes hardened. "But I did," Eliza's mind raced. If Cole went with them, would they leave her? Would they leave Naya and Tomas, or would Harrow take more because power was never satisfied? Cole stood still, and Eliza felt the weight of his choice press against her heart. He could run. He could fight. He could surrender. Each path held loss. The cabin door creaked wider. Naya stepped out, rifle held firm now, barrel pointed just low enough to show she still held control. "Eliza stays," Naya said. Harrow's gaze flicked to her with annoyance. "You don't get to decide?" he replied. Naya's voice did not shake. "On my land I decide," she said. Harrow's eyes narrowed. "Your land," he repeated, like the words amused him. "This land belonged to your people once, didn't it?" How did that work out? The cruelty in that line made Eliza's stomach twist. She saw Naya's mouth tighten, saw old pain rise behind her eyes. A Native American tale lived in the lines of Naya's face, in the way she stood like she had learned to endure storms made by men. Cole shifted one step forward. "Enough," he said. Harrow stared at him. "You still think you can tell me enough?" he said softly. "That's what I came to cure," Cole's voice dropped. "If I go," he said, "you leave them. You leave the girl. You leave this cabin. You leave this land." Harrow's smile returned, slow and satisfied, like a man watching a trap close. "Now we're talking," he said. Eliza's breath caught. Her chest felt like it would break. She stepped toward the door before she could stop herself. "No," she whispered, and the word barely formed. Cole's head turned slightly. In the dark, his eyes found her. The look he gave was not despair. It was apology and something tender that scared her more than anything. Because tenderness meant she had begun to matter to him, and that meant she could be taken from him. Eliza pushed past the doorframe, stepping into the cold night. The clearing spun with shadows, horses shifting, men watching. She clutched the coat tight around her, trying to stand steady. "You can't," she said louder now, voice trembling but clear. "You can't go because of me." Harrow's gaze slid to her with interest, like a man noticing a new prize. "Well," he said, "there she is." Cole took a quick step toward her, protective. "Get back inside," he said low. Eliza shook her head. "I won't be the reason you—" She could not finish. The fear of saying it made it real. Naya's eyes flashed. "Eliza, inside," she ordered, but Eliza stayed rooted. Harrow leaned slightly forward, as if tasting the moment. "This is touching," he said. "A Wild West love story blooming under my moonlight." Cole's voice turned sharp as flint. "Don't speak of her." Harrow's smile widened. "Or what?" he said. "You'll stand in my way again." Cole's shoulders rose and fell with one slow breath. Then he made a decision Eliza felt more than saw. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small pouch. He tossed it at Harrow's feet. Coins spilled into the dirt, catching faint light. "That's all I have," Cole said. "Take it. Take me." "But you leave them." Harrow looked down at the coins like they were an insult. Then his gaze lifted, colder now. "You think this is about money," he said. "You still don't understand." One of Harrow's riders shifted, and the horse snorted. The man's hand moved, quick and subtle, toward his belt. Naya lifted her rifle higher. "Back," she warned. Cole raised his hand, palm out toward Naya. "Don't," he said again, but this time his voice carried a plea. "If you fire, he won't stop. He'll burn this place to teach the lesson." Naya's jaw clenched. Her eyes shimmered with rage and fear tangled together. Eliza felt trapped between them, between sacrifice and survival. She looked at Cole, saw the weight of his past catching up, saw the way he was trying to pay for old wrongs with his own future. And then, from the tree line behind Harrow's men, a new sound came, sudden and sharp. A horse whinnied in alarm. Branches snapped, all heads turned. A shadow moved among the pines, fast and silent, closing in on the clearing. Harrow's smile vanished. Cole's body tensed. Naya whispered one word, barely audible, filled with dread. "More." The shadow in the pines moved again, closer, and the horses in the clearing began to toss their heads. One stamped hard enough to throw dirt. Harrow's men turned in their saddles, trying to see what the dark was hiding. Then a voice came from the trees, calm and clear. "Lower your hands," the voice said. "All of you." A lantern lifted between two trunks, its flame cupped against the wind. Behind it stepped three figures, not rushing, not afraid. Two were men with long coats and rifles held low. The third was an older man with a star pinned to his vest and a face like weathered stone. He walked with a limp, but every step carried authority. Naya let out a breath she had been holding too long. "Marshal Reed," she said quietly, like a prayer answered at the last moment. Harrow's mouth tightened. He did not look surprised, but his eyes cooled, calculating. "Reed," he said, as if tasting a bitter thing. "I wondered how long it would take you to come crawling out of the brush." The marshal stopped at the edge of the clearing. The lantern light caught his badge and the lines around his eyes. "I don't crawl," he said. "I walk where I'm needed." Cole did not move, but Eliza felt his body ease just a little, as if a rope around his chest had loosened. Still, his hand remained lifted toward Naya, silently asking her not to make the wrong choice in a moment that could break them all. Marshal Reed's gaze swept over the scene, Harrow and his men. Naya with her rifle, Cole standing between danger and the cabin. Eliza in Cole's coat, shaking but upright. "I heard you were hunting again, Harrow," the marshal said. "Heard you rode out with more men than you need for honest business?" Harrow's smile returned, smaller and sharper. "I run freight," he said. "I protect what's mine?" The marshal nodded once, like he had expected that answer. Then he turned his head slightly, and one of the men beside him stepped forward, holding a folded paper wrapped in oilcloth. "I've been waiting on this," the marshal said. "Came through 2 days ago. Territory office." "Proper seals." Harrow's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Marshal Reed did not hand it to him. He held it up in the lantern light so all could see the red stamp and ribbon. "Land papers," he said, "for this cabin and the acreage around it, filed under Naya's name. Signed and recorded." The clearing went quiet in a way that felt deeper than fear. Eliza stared at the paper, not fully understanding, but sensing the weight of it. A document could be a shield on the frontier, thin but real. Harrow's voice turned cold. "You think paper stops me?" Marshal Reed's stare did not waver. "Paper gives me something to hang you with," he said. "Lawfully." One of Harrow's riders shifted, uneasy now. Harrow glanced at his men, and Eliza saw it, the first crack. Not in their courage, but in their certainty. Naya's voice came low, filled with something like hurt. "This land was always ours," she said. "I just had to fight for the words to match the truth." Harrow's jaw flexed. "Your truth," he muttered. Marshal Reed's gaze slid to Cole. "And you," he said. "Cole Danner." "I heard you were dead." Cole's face tightened. "Didn't get that lucky," he replied. The marshal nodded as if he knew the kind of man Cole was, the kind who carried guilt like a bedroll. "You've been hard to find," Reed said. "But not as hard as Harrow thought." Harrow's eyes sharpened. "This isn't about him," he snapped. "He owes me." Marshal Reed lifted a hand. "No," he said. "This is about Bitter Hollow." The name fell into the clearing like a stone into water. Cole's shoulders tensed. Naya's eyes went distant. Even Harrow's men seemed to lean away from the memory of it. Marshal Reed looked straight at Harrow. "A family died there," he said, voice steady. "A mother, a father, 2 boys. One girl lived. She lived because someone put his body between her and the men you paid." Eliza felt a chill run through her. She looked at Naya sharply, and the woman's face told the story without words. Naya swallowed once. "That girl was mine," she said, voice rough. "My sister's child. I found her after. Half-starved and shaking. She would not speak for months." Eliza's hand rose to her mouth. Tomas gripped Naya's skirt, eyes wide as if hearing a ghost speak. Cole's throat worked. "I tried," he said quietly. "I tried to stop it." Marshal Reed nodded. "I know," he said. "I've talked to the one who lived." Harrow's smile was gone now. His eyes had turned flat. "You don't have proof," he said. "You never did." Marshal Reed motioned, and one of the men from the trees stepped forward with a small ledger. Its cover was worn, edges dark with age. He held it out like it was heavy. "Found this in a burned freight wagon last spring," the marshal said. Took me months to match the marks, Harrow's marks. Your man wrote your payments down, names, dates, places. Harrow stared at the ledger, and for the first time he looked truly uncertain, not because he cared what he had done, but because the world had finally placed its hand on his shoulder. The marshal's voice stayed calm. I can take you in now, he said. Or I can take you in after you do something foolish tonight. Either way, you're coming. Harrow's eyes flicked to his men. Eliza watched them, one by one, avoiding his gaze. They had signed on for chasing a man, not for standing against a marshal with papers and proof in the open night. Harrow drew a slow breath, as if swallowing pride like poison. Then he lifted his chin. This isn't finished, he said. Marshal Reed took a step forward. It is, he said. Harrow's shoulders stiffened. He said nothing else. He signaled his men with a sharp motion, and the riders began to turn their horses, slow and resentful. One lingered, eyes on Cole, then on Eliza, then looked away. They rode out the way they came, swallowed by the trees and the dark. Only when the hoofbeats faded did Eliza realize she was still trembling. Her legs nearly gave, but Cole's hand found her elbow, steady and warm. You're safe, he said softly. Eliza looked up at him. The words made her chest ache, because they sounded like something she had not been allowed to believe. For how long? She whispered. Marshal Reed stepped closer, his limp showing now, but his presence still firm. Long enough, he said. We'll take Harrow by daylight. He won't outrun a warrant and a ledger. Naya lowered her rifle at last. Her eyes glistened in the lantern light, but she did not let tears fall. You brought the papers, she said to Reed. The marshal nodded. You earned them, he replied. Tomas ran to the marshal then, hugging his waist like the night itself had scared him into needing something solid. Reed patted his head gently. Eliza turned toward the cabin. It still stood, smoke still rose. The world had not ended. That felt like a miracle. Then she heard a sound from the edge of the clearing, small and broken. Her father stood there, half hidden behind a tree, his face pale in the lantern light. He must have followed the trail in a drunken panic, thinking to claim her back, thinking the world still bent for him. His eyes met Eliza's, and for once the bottle was not in his hand, only empty shame. Eliza, he rasped, come home. The word home struck her hard. Home had never been a place with him. It had been a room full of fear. Cole shifted, as if ready to block him again, but Eliza raised a hand. No, she said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. You don't get to call it home. Her father's mouth trembled. I didn't mean, he started. You did, Eliza said. You did, and you kept doing. Marshal Reed's gaze moved to the man. You're under my eye, he said. Go back to town. If you come near this cabin again, you'll sleep behind bars. The father looked at the badge, then at Eliza's face, and something in him folded. He turned away without another word, disappearing into the dark like a man already gone. Silence settled again. Different now. Not a silence of threat, a silence of after. Naya touched Eliza's shoulder, careful. You were brave, she said, and in her voice Eliza heard respect, not pity. Eliza swallowed. I was terrified, she admitted. Naya nodded. So was I, she said. Bravery is not the absence of it. Cole stood close, not holding her like a claim, but near enough that Eliza could feel his steadiness. She turned toward him. You were going to give yourself up? She said, voice tight. Cole's eyes lowered. I thought it might spare you, he said. Eliza stared at him, the ache rising again. I've been spared by men with bottles and bargains, she said. I don't want that kind of saving. I want the kind that stays. Cole's breath caught. He looked at her then, truly looked, like he was seeing a life he might be allowed to live if he dared reach for it. I don't know if I deserve to stay, he said. Eliza stepped closer, the coat slipping from her shoulders a little. Maybe none of us deserve much, she whispered. But we still live. We still try. Cole's hand lifted slowly, as if asking permission without words. Eliza nodded once. His fingers brushed her cheek, gentle, almost unsure. It was the softest touch she had felt in years, and it made her eyes burn. The marshal cleared his throat softly, giving them a moment of dignity. I'll be back with men at first light, he said. We'll finish what should have been finished long ago, Naya nodded. We'll be here, she said. Later, when the lantern was hung inside and the door barred, Eliza sat by the hearth with a blanket over her knees. Tomas fell asleep on the floor near the fire, his hands still clutched around a small carved horse. Naya moved quietly, tending the stew, checking the window, doing the work of keeping a life together. Outside, Cole lay in the shed, but not far. Eliza could feel his presence like a guard at the edge of her fear. The night still held unknowns, the frontier always did. But as the fire cracked and the cabin settled, Eliza felt something new take root beneath the old pain, not certainty. Not perfect safety, something steadier, quiet hope. In the morning, the sun would rise over the pines and the land would look the same as it always had, harsh and beautiful. Yet Eliza would wake in a place where her name mattered, where a promise was not spoken with a bottle in hand, and where a man who carried scars could still choose to build instead of run. And on the forgotten trails behind them, the past would finally begin to loosen its grip.